we begin, viewer discretion is strongly advised. The following is for educational and entertainment purposes only. This is the verbatim federal courtroom testimony of the Sean Diddy Combs trial as reported by Inner City Press. The world knew him as the funny guy, the voice, the laugh, the legend behind Happy Gilmore and Billy Madison. But when Adam Sandler walked into that federal courtroom, no one was prepared for what came next. This wasn't comedy, this was confession. Sitting across from one of the most powerful men in music, Sandler didn't crack a joke. He cracked open a past he'd hidden for nearly 2 decades, and with a trembling voice, he pulled back the curtain on a friendship that was never what it seemed. What he described silenced the room, and would go on to unravel one of the biggest names in entertainment. But that was just the beginning. It was day 13 of the federal trial against Sean Diddy Combs. Tensions were already high, but when the courtroom door swung open, everyone turned, and the air shifted. In walked Adam Sandler, not as the jokester, not as the guy with the silly voices or the punchlines that shaped a generation of comedy. He wasn't smiling, he wasn't performing, and he wasn't here to make anyone laugh. He was here to tell the truth. For a few seconds, the room didn't know how to react. This wasn't a cameo or a character. This was real. The man who had brought so much joy to the world sat down, looked toward the judge, and began to speak. But his voice wasn't booming or comedic. It was quiet, shaky, and filled with something no one expected: pain. Sandler described a moment that changed the course of his life: a weekend in Miami, what Diddy had called a brotherhood retreat. At first, Adam said, it felt like a gesture. Diddy had flown him out, planned the whole thing. Sandler admitted he felt strange about it, like something was off, but he brushed it aside. Maybe I'm overthinking it, he had told himself. They had dinner, talked, laughed. Diddy gave him a tour of the mansion, room after room filled with opulence and ego. Music played softly in the background. Incense burned in the corners. Lights glowed low and warm, casting shadows that danced across the marble floors. It felt surreal, dreamlike. But dreams can turn into nightmares fast. Eventually, they stopped in front of a massive set of double doors. Diddy turned to Sandler and said, "Let's wash off the day, cleanse the bad vibes." Behind the doors was a spa-like steam room. Marble walls, gold fixtures, the kind of room that looked like it belonged in Dubai, not Miami. But for Sandler, the luxury wasn't comforting. It felt like a trap. He hesitated, said he'd just rinse off, nothing crazy. But Diddy walked in first, removed his robe, and turned on the hot water. Then he looked back and said, "Come on, man. We boys, brothers, this is what kings do." According to Sandler, the pressure wasn't loud. It was quiet and suffocating, like an unspoken threat, a kind of manipulation disguised as bonding. Reluctantly, Adam stepped inside. He left his boxers on, tried to keep it light. But Diddy wasn't having it. He reached for Adam's waistband and tugged, laughing. "Don't be shy. This ain't Hollywood. This is real life." Sandler froze. In that moment, he said, he felt like a child again. Small, powerless, unable to say no without ruining everything. He focused on anything but Diddy. The steam rising from the tiles, the ceiling, the patterns on the wall, anything to escape. Then, without warning, Diddy leaned in and whispered something that would stick with him for the rest of his life. "You think I let you in my circle just to make jokes?" It wasn't just a question, it was a warning, a power move. After that night, Sandler didn't sleep. He stayed in his guest room, pretending to be sick. He kept his distance, but something had changed, and he knew it. The line between friend and predator had blurred, he told the courtroom, and I wasn't sure what side he was on anymore. He said goodbye to Miami, not with a handshake, but with shame. "I left feeling dirty," Sandler said, and it wasn't because of the shower. That was the moment the mask began to crack. Just a few weeks after the Miami trip, Adam Sandler received another message from Diddy. This time, the vibe was casual. No retreat, no luxury invite, just a chill hangout. "Low-key recharge day," Diddy called it. "We'll throw on a few movies, brainstorm some skits, just like the old days," he said. For a moment, Sandler felt a flicker of nostalgia. The two had shared laughs, creative energy, even late-night writing sessions back in the day. Maybe it really was just that, two friends reconnecting. But something in his gut still didn't feel right. When he arrived at Diddy's house in Los Angeles, that feeling grew louder. The house was quiet, too quiet. No assistants bustling around, no music, no energy. Just Diddy, alone, dressed in silk pajamas, holding a remote and smiling like nothing had ever happened. And that was part of his power. As Sandler later said in court, he made you question your own discomfort, like it was all in your head. They sat down and started watching a movie, a classic comedy, something they had both loved as kids. For a few minutes, it felt almost normal, familiar, safe even. Then Diddy paused the movie, turned to Sandler. "You look tired," he said. "Come nap with me, bro. Don't fight it. Just rest." The request hung in the air, strange and out of place. Adam laughed nervously, waiting for the punchline, but Diddy wasn't joking. His expression didn't change. His tone didn't soften. He stood up, walked toward the hallway, and glanced over his shoulder like he expected Adam to follow. And somehow, he did. Sandler later admitted in court, "I didn't want to make it weird. I thought, if I just played along, nothing would happen. I'd be out of there in an hour." He followed Diddy into a dark, oversized bedroom with blackout curtains already drawn. The air smelled like cologne and something else, something he couldn't quite place. Diddy climbed into a California king bed and patted the space beside him. "Just close your eyes," he said. "You don't have to do anything. Trust me." Adam sat stiffly on the edge of the bed, muscles locked. His mind raced. The silence between them stretched longer than any scene in any movie they'd ever watched. Every second felt like an hour. And then Diddy said it. Calm, cold, certain. "You're mine now, Sandy. Always have been." Sandler's throat closed. He remembered those words exactly. Not because they were aggressive, but because they weren't. It was how Diddy said it, like he was stating a fact, not making a claim. "I kept my eyes open," Sandler said on the stand. "I didn't move. I didn't breathe. I just waited." Eventually, Diddy got up. The spell broke. Adam made an excuse and left. But he didn't go home and forget. He cried the entire drive. Because by then, he understood. This wasn't friendship. This was control. And still, he told no one. Not his wife, not his agent, not even himself, really. Because the hardest part wasn't what happened in the bed. It was the war inside his head after. By the time the Aspen trip rolled around, Adam Sandler was already uneasy. He hadn't confronted Diddy. He hadn't told anyone what had happened in Miami, or during the disturbing nap invitation in Los Angeles. But something inside him had shifted. The way he smiled felt forced. The way he laughed felt rehearsed. And yet, when Diddy invited him to a private industry retreat in Aspen, Adam said yes. Why? Because it sounded safe. It was supposed to be public, Adam later told the court. Organized, structured. It wasn't just him and me. It was a whole weekend for creatives, writers, producers, artists. I figured with all those people around, he wouldn't try anything. But predators don't always wait for isolation. Sometimes, they create it. When Adam arrived at the ski resort, everything looked normal. Picturesque, even. Snowy hills, smiling celebrities, catered meals, group activities. But then Diddy leaned in during one of the mixers and said, "Let's bounce for a bit. Got a private lodge up the trail. You'll love it." Adam hesitated. "I thought we were staying here," he said. "Nah," Diddy grinned. "Just us for a while. Quick ride, then we come back." The pressure was subtle, playful on the surface, but deeper underneath. And once again, Adam ignored his instincts. They took snowmobiles up a remote trail. Miles of trees and silence. No cell service, no lights. Just snow and sky. When they reached the private lodge, Adam felt his stomach drop. "It was beautiful," he said, but that made it worse. Inside, the lodge was quiet. Too quiet. A fire roared in a stone fireplace. Candles flickered. The whole place was staged like a scene. And in the middle of the room, a camera on a tripod. Adam tried to play it cool. Maybe it was for a vlog. Maybe it was part of some artsy project Diddy was working on. "I wanted to believe it was harmless," he said. But deep down, I knew it wasn't. Then it began. Diddy walked over to a dresser, opened a drawer, and tossed Adam a pair of silk shorts and a robe. "Put this on," he said. Adam blinked. "I'm good." he replied. "I've got clothes on. I'm fine." But Diddy didn't accept that. "You're in my space now," he said. "This is how we do it." What followed was a mix of humor and pressure. Diddy made jokes, he laughed, he played it like it was no big deal. But there was something in his tone, a sharp edge beneath the charm. Adam didn't want to argue. Not out there, not alone in the woods with no way to call for help. So he stepped into the bathroom. "I didn't want a confrontation," he told the court. "I didn't want to be the guy who made it weird, but mostly, I didn't want to be trapped out there with him angry." He changed, and when he stepped back into the room, Diddy was already in his robe, reclining on a bearskin rug in front of the fire, holding a glass of wine like he was hosting a photo shoot. "He looked at me like I was prey," Adam said, "like this was a test, and I was failing." Then Diddy stood up, walked toward him slowly and said, "Now we're equals. No layers, no lies." He told Adam to strip, fully. "Be raw," he said. "Let go, no ego here." Adam refused, firmly. That's when Diddy got closer, too close, and reached for the knot on Adam's robe. "I backed away," Adam said. "I told him I was leaving, that I didn't feel right about any of this." But Diddy didn't back off. He said something that chilled Adam to his core. "You'll regret this. This is about trust. You don't walk out on someone who sees the real you." It wasn't just a plea, it was a warning. Adam didn't say another word. He grabbed his coat and walked out into the snow. No map, no service, just cold and adrenaline pushing him back toward the main resort. "I didn't speak to anyone when I got back," he said. "I didn't eat. I didn't sleep. I just sat in my room, staring at the wall." No one touched him, but he felt violated, emotionally, spiritually, psychologically, and it wasn't over. "I never wore that robe again," he told the jury, "but I've never felt clean since." That night in Aspen wasn't just the breaking point. It was the night Adam realized that in Diddy's world, lines didn't blur. They vanished. By 2007, Adam Sandler was back to working, or at least pretending he was okay. Behind the scenes, he was quieter, more cautious, but on the surface, he was still the Sandman, still showing up to interviews, smiling for press photos, shaking hands and cracking jokes. So when Diddy called with a new idea, something creative, something huge, Adam didn't immediately say no. "He told me it was just a chill night," Adam recalled later. "He wanted to show me something, get my feedback, said it was comedy related, called it our next big move." It sounded like the old days, two friends brainstorming again. But from the second Adam stepped into Diddy's bear estate that night, he knew something was wrong. The house was empty, no assistants, no crew, no creatives, just Diddy, and 2 glasses already poured, a cigar already lit. It wasn't a hangout, it was a setup. Still, Adam sat down, trying to stay cool, trying not to trigger whatever he felt was simmering just beneath Diddy's polished surface. Then Diddy dimmed the lights, fired up a projector, and hit play. "I thought it was footage from a pilot we'd shot or something," Adam said. At first, it looked like behind-the-scenes clips, but within seconds, everything changed. The footage was grainy, the lighting poor, but what was happening on screen was unmistakable and horrifying. A well-known celebrity, naked, disoriented, caught on camera in a private moment they clearly didn't consent to. No crew, no laugh track, no acting, just violation. Adam's stomach turned. He stood up immediately. "Shut it off," he told Diddy. "What the hell is this?" But Diddy just laughed, calm, relaxed, like this was just part of the game. "Come on, man," he said. "That's the industry. We all got tapes." That line, "we all got tapes," chilled Adam more than anything. It wasn't a joke. It was a message. And then Diddy looked him dead in the eyes. "What if I told you I had one of you?" Adam felt everything inside him freeze. His hands went cold. His throat tightened. "What do you mean?" he asked, already knowing the answer. Diddy didn't flinch. "Back in Aspen," he said. "The robe, the camera, it was on." Up until that moment, Adam had convinced himself that nothing had been recorded, that even if things had gotten weird, it was just in his head. Just awkward memories buried beneath years of self-denial. But now, he knew. It hadn't been buried. It had been cataloged. Adam said his body started shaking. He felt lightheaded, like he wasn't even in the room anymore. "I hadn't even remembered the camera until that moment," he said. But the way he said it, I knew. He had something. Eventually, Diddy stepped aside and let him leave. But as Adam walked out, he heard one last comment behind him. "You're safe, as long as you're loyal." That line rang in his ears for weeks, months, years. It was a trap dressed as protection. It was a leash disguised as loyalty. And from that point forward, Adam wasn't just living with trauma, he was living with fear. Fear of exposure, fear of disbelief, fear that the man who once called him brother had reduced him to collateral. In the car that night, Adam sat in the driveway for hours, too scared to speak, too ashamed to scream. "I realized I wasn't a friend," he told the court years later. "I was leverage. And there's nothing more terrifying than knowing your silence isn't loyalty. It's survival." After that night at Diddy's mansion, the night of the tape, the threat, the quiet promise of control, Adam Sandler didn't just leave a house. He left behind a version of himself. The version that trusted people, that believed talent and kindness were enough. That thought friendship, even in Hollywood, could be real. Because after that moment, everything changed. He didn't go to the press, he didn't tell friends, he didn't even tell his wife. Instead, he did what trauma so often forces people to do. He tried to carry it alone, but the weight never left. On the outside, he kept working. Movie after movie, talk shows, appearances, fan selfies, all of it masked in laughter. But inside, the shadow lingered. Years passed, but the feeling didn't. It grew. The jokes felt harder to deliver. The stages felt smaller. The spotlight no longer warmed him. It burned. In interviews, people said he seemed quieter, more withdrawn. "Adam's mellowed out," they said. But it wasn't mellowing. It was retreat. "I stopped trusting people," he said on the stand. "I turned down gigs I would have loved. I started avoiding anyone who reminded me of him." The trauma wasn't just emotional, it became physical. He described waking up in the middle of the night, soaked in sweat, gasping for air, heart pounding like he was back in that spa, back in that bed, back in that robe. At first, he thought it was stress. But it kept happening. The dreams weren't literal. They came as metaphors, twisted scenes that made no sense until they did. In one, he's performing stand up for a crowd, but the theater is empty. No laughter, just silence. And in the back of the room, Diddy stands alone, arms crossed, shaking his head slowly. In another, Adam's trapped in a hall of mirrors. His reflection repeated infinitely. But every version of him is wearing that silk robe, all of them watching, none of them blinking. "I thought I was losing my mind," he told the court. "Because who would believe it? I'm Adam Sandler. I make people laugh. How could I be scared?" Even his closest collaborators began to notice. He would zone out during shoots, cut jokes short, flinch when someone touched his shoulder unexpectedly. On the set of Uncut Gems, he nearly walked off the film. Not because of the pressure, not because of the role, but because one of the filming locations reminded him of Aspen. "The wood paneling, the cologne, the silence," he said. "I told the director I had food poisoning, but the truth was, I couldn't breathe in that room." It wasn't until 2019 that he collapsed on set, literally shaking, unresponsive. Doctors called it exhaustion, but therapy revealed the truth. PTSD. "I didn't want to believe it," he admitted. PTSD was for soldiers, victims, trauma survivors. I was just a comedian. But trauma doesn't care what you do for a living. It doesn't care how famous you are. If you've been silenced, manipulated, emotionally caged, it finds you. And it found Adam, night after night, in every mirror, in every laugh that didn't feel real. He told the court that accepting the word abuse took years, because no one ever hit him. There were no bruises, just the slow erosion of his autonomy, his sense of safety, his ability to breathe without fear of being watched, recorded, owned. "He didn't hit me," Adam said, "but he hit my mind. my dignity, my peace. It was a kind of violence people don't talk about, the kind that doesn't show up on camera, the kind that hides behind fame, charisma, and expensive cologne. And that's why it stayed hidden for so long. For a while, Adam Sandler thought he had escaped. After Aspen, after that twisted night by the fireplace, he stopped responding to Diddy's calls. He made excuses, turned down invites, pulled away. And for a while, it worked, at least on the surface. Diddy moved on publicly. Adam returned to movies, appearing on red carpets and comedy panels. He tried to forget, to bury the memories like old footage locked in a vault no one would ever open again. But trauma doesn't stay buried, and Diddy never really let go. One morning in 2022, Adam found a plain envelope waiting in his mailbox. No return address, no markings, just his name, printed on a white label. He opened it. Inside was a small USB drive, and nothing else. No note, no letter, just a piece of cold plastic that would change everything. When he plugged it in, a single video file appeared. It was short, low resolution, but unmistakable. It showed Adam in Aspen, in that robe, and Diddy's voice could be heard faintly in the background. There was no assault, no overt act of violence, but the implication was enough. It was leverage. And then Adam noticed something worse. A note tucked behind the USB almost missed. 7 chilling words. "Be careful what you say. We all have ghosts." Adam froze. "I felt like I was back in that lodge," he told the court, "like I had never left." This wasn't just a reminder. It was a threat. Diddy still had the tape, still had the power. And now, he wanted Adam to remember. But instead of running, Adam did something he hadn't done before. He fought back. He called a private investigator, someone he trusted. Together, they started digging, recovering old voicemails, backing up long-forgotten email chains, scouring cloud accounts tied to old phone numbers. That's when they found it. A dormant cloud server tied to an outdated account Diddy had once bragged about keeping on lock. Inside, surveillance footage. Hundreds of hours from his properties across the country, angled from corners, from mirrors, from ceiling vents, labeled by date and location. It was meticulous and terrifying. That's when Adam realized he wasn't the only one. He reached out to former co-stars, collaborators, industry friends, people who had once been close to Diddy but had quietly distanced themselves over the years. And one by one, they started to talk. A former child star confessed he, too, had received cryptic messages, clips of late-night hotel conversations, footage from private parties, remarks made off the record that suddenly resurfaced in the form of implied threats. Another, a rising singer from the early 2000s, admitted she had been blackmailed over a single conversation caught on a house mic, one that was never meant to be recorded. It was a pattern, a system, a quiet empire built on secrets. Diddy didn't need to say anything, Adam said. Just knowing that he had something on you, that was enough to keep people in line. Some tried to brush it off. He's just intense. He tests people. But Adam knew better now. This wasn't eccentricity. It was control. And the silence around it wasn't coincidence. It was designed. He realized he'd been part of a web, not a friendship. Every laugh, every collaboration, every moment that felt spontaneous might have been surveillance. So he started building his own archive. Emails, photos, call logs, every detail he could remember, every voice message he'd once ignored. With his attorney, he drafted a sealed affidavit, not to attack, but to protect himself. He wasn't looking for revenge. He was looking for the truth, because the worst part of trauma isn't the moment it happens. It's the years afterward, when you convince yourself it wasn't that bad. When you wonder if anyone would believe you, when you start to question your own memory. But now, with each file recovered, each witness contacted, each whispered rumor confirmed, Adam wasn't just remembering, he was preparing. And when the trial finally came, he was ready. Summary of enhancements: elevated suspense with the USB envelope, reveal introduced systemic blackmail and tied it to multiple victims, highlighted the mental shift from fear to preparation, maintained pacing and clarity while building a stronger bridge to the trial. When Adam Sandler stepped into the courtroom, the world expected a cameo. What they got was a reckoning. There were no movie trailers playing, No crowd laughter, no stage lights, just the quiet thud of his footsteps echoing through the chamber as he made his way to the stand. This wasn't the man people remembered from Billy Madison or The Wedding Singer. This was someone else. Older, worn, focused. And when he took his seat and looked across the room at Sean Diddy Combs, he didn't flinch. He inhaled deeply and began. For hours, Adam unpacked it all. Years of silence and second-guessing, of blurry memories sharpened through therapy, of laughter used as a shield, and fear hidden behind every red carpet smile. He spoke of Miami, of Los Angeles, of Aspen, of the robe, the camera, the tape, of waking up night after night, gasping for air, seeing Diddy's shadow in dreams that didn't feel like dreams. And then he pulled out a piece of paper, crumpled, yellowed at the edges, torn from the back of a 51st date script. He held it up. "This," he said, "is something I wrote in my trailer, right after a phone call I never told anyone about." He read it aloud. "I wish I could disappear." The courtroom fell into a deeper silence than before. Not a sound, not a cough, not a breath. Adam looked up. "I laughed on that phone call," he said, "because that's what I was supposed to do. That's who I was. The funny guy, the safe guy, the one who never made waves." He turned toward the defense table, toward Diddy. "But I wasn't laughing when I wrote this." He wasn't angry, he wasn't yelling, but his voice carried like a stone dropped into still water. "You didn't hit me. You didn't lock me in a room. You didn't need to." He paused. "You locked me in my own head." He described the invisible prison, the one built not from walls, but from memories, threats, and the knowledge that someone, somewhere, had footage that could end him. He described the times he almost told someone, and then didn't. The podcast interview in 2021 where he hinted at "a music mogul who made me feel unsafe," a line that never aired. The letter he drafted in 2010 to his agency, worried about Diddy's behavior. A letter his rep allegedly advised him to shred if you want to work again. But the line that broke the jury came next. Adam turned his gaze away from Diddy and into the courtroom. And then, looking directly at the camera, he said, "You took my piece. You took my voice. But you didn't take my truth. And today, I'm giving it back to myself." Not as a punchline, not as a monologue, as a promise. He continued, steady now, defiance growing beneath the tremble in his voice. "I'm not the first. I won't be the last. But maybe I can be the loudest. And maybe that's what I was meant to do all along." He shared something from 2005, on the set of Click, in between takes. He'd asked a co-star jokingly, "If you could fast forward through any part of your life, what would it be?" They laughed. It was a bit, a throwaway line. But Adam remembered thinking about the nights, the robe, the silence. That's what I'd skip, he thought. Now, nearly 20 years later, he wasn't skipping anymore. He was rewinding. He was pressing play. He was standing in it and naming it. The defense tried to punch back. They pointed to his success, his Netflix deals, his continued fame. If Mr. Sandler was so deeply harmed, they asked, why did his career flourish? Adam didn't blink. "You think because I made people laugh, I wasn't broken inside?" he said. "You think success cancels out trauma? That's the problem. People think fame is armor, but it's not. It's a costume." And then he did something no one expected. He smiled, not for the cameras, not for the audience, but for himself. Because for the first time in years, the performance was over. When the trial ended, Adam Sandler didn't celebrate. He didn't rush to the cameras. He didn't pose for victory photos. He just walked out of the courthouse with his wife and children, quietly, slowly, and without a word. And maybe that silence said everything. For the first time in nearly 2 decades, the man who had made the world laugh finally let himself cry. For real. Because the truth was no longer hidden, the pain had a voice. And the laughter, it no longer had to be a shield. In one of his most iconic films, Click, Sandler's character asked, "If you could fast forward through any part of your life, which one would it be?" Back then, he thought he knew the answer. Now, He didn't fast forward. He rewound, he pressed play, and he faced it. And in doing so, he reminded millions watching around the world that trauma doesn't care about fame, that silence protects predators, not victims, and that sometimes the bravest thing a man can do is stop being funny long enough to finally be heard.